Once there were 4 children, whose names were Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy.
Suppose I'm writing a novel. I write, Mary laid down her book. Next moment came a knock at the door. For Mary, who's got to live in the imaginary time of the story, there's no interval between putting down the book and hearing the knock. But I, her creator, between writing the first part of that sentence and the second, may have gone out for an hour's walk and spent the whole hour thinking about Mary.
We make things by the law in which we are made. We create because we are created.
In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit.
One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, in the darkness bind them.
Tolkien and Lewis, both in their way, lifted me out of this world to show me a thundering beauty. And when I read the last sentence and came tumbling back to earth, I could still hear the peal. I hear it to this day. God allowed those stories to lift the veil on the imaginary world to show me the real world behind it, which ended up being, in the end, the one I was already in. The real world, at least in part, isn't out there somewhere, nor is it in my mind. It's here, right under my feet, all around me. Tolkien and Lewis held the fabric of Narnia or Middle-earth in one hand and clutched our world in the other, building a bridge across which we could set out for perilous realms and yet return safely with some of the beauty we found there.
My first and last philosophy, that which I believe in with unbroken certainty, I learnt in the nursery. I generally learnt it from a nurse, that is, from the solemn and star-appointed priestess at once of democracy and tradition. The things I believed most then, the things I believe most now, are the things called fairy tales.
We live in a moment that's unlike any other moment, a moment of bizarre tyranny, a moment of overreach.
I was nearly torn apart by a crazy doctor.
A moment of fear. It's like, and how are we living? How are we standing up in this moment?
I was made asleep by a bunch of mangy pirates.
Are we full of joy? Like, are we characters who are full of joy and unafraid?
And eaten. Got that? Eaten by a fire-breathing dragon. And not to mention being tossed, squashed, and scared practically to death.
It's like, how do we image God in this particular narrative in which we've been placed, in this chapter? And we get trained for that by reading about Sam and Frodo and Aragorn and Gandalf, and reading, Charlotte's Web and Animal Farm, and reading about Prince Caspian. Like, when you're little, you read those things and you read stories when you're older, and it reinforces what is the courageous action of a character in this moment.
Yet you stand before me.
Well, yeah.
Think, boy. What kind of an adventure would you have had if I brought you here with a turn of the page?
I wept bitterly, and then I said to myself, when everything happens quite miserably, then He sends help. I have always read so. People must first of all suffer a great deal before they can bring anything to accomplishment.
God, who at various times and in various ways spoke in time past to the fathers by the prophets, has in these last days spoken to us by His Son, whom He has appointed heir of all things, through whom also He made the worlds.
For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of Him who subjected it in hope, because the creation itself also will be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pangs together until now. Not only that, but we also who have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, eagerly waiting for the adoption, the redemption of our body.
Minstrel boy to the war is gone, in the ranks of death you'll find him. His father's sword he hath girded on, and his wild harp slung behind him. God of song, said the warrior bard, though all the world betray thee, one sword at least thy right shall guard, one faithful harp shall praise thee. The minstrel fell, but the foeman's chain could not bring that proud soul under. The harp he loved ne'er spoke again, for he tore its cords asunder, and said, no chain shall sully thee, thou soul of love and bravery. Thy songs were made for the pure and free, they shall never sound in slavery. The chains upon the people came, and they gave away their freedom. No prophets left, they then grew lame, they accepted their false kingdom. But one young man saw the minstrel boy, and he took up the shredded strings, and with great love remade with joy the sacred tool for truth to sing.
I trembled at the voice of God, a voice of love and thunder deep. With love he means to save us all, and love has chosen you and me. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Poets at War. Ya General Joshua. Brendan over there, I don't know what his rank is, and Alex, still haven't ranked you yet either. We started left off the last one with the salutes, and now we're doing it again. It's fun.
It's Poets at War, man.
Yeah.
We gotta be militaristic.
Yep. I
Way now.
I don't think I've ever said in any kind of canon specifically, but this voice right here that does the thing when I do the announcer thing, that's Sergeant Ollie. So
Sergeant Ollie.
Yep. So if I ever do this sort of a thing, it's Sergeant Ollie. But anyway,
We need a world building doc.
right? Yeah, it's just he's such a fun voice to do in general. Just saying, "Are you old timey with root beer?" I don't know. But yeah, so it's Casey's birthday, my wife, and we had a fun time. Went to hibachi and had dinner, as we call it, around here. And she's gone to an escape room with her lady friends and has left me with the children. So if they interrupt at any time, we're just gonna roll with it because this is Poets of War, and children are part of the war. We employ child labor in our warfare.
We do not.
That's all true.
Not support child warfare. We do not support.
Anyway, so how about you, Brendan? How's life going with the little child? Oh my lord.
Okay, so babies don't sleep. News at 11.
I mean, give or take.
Actually, the past few nights haven't been that bad. For the first couple weeks of his life, he would wake up at 2:15 and not go back to sleep until 5:30. Combine this with the fact that he wants to be held. He loves being held.
Oh yeah.
And
Especially
it was like, all right, we're not, we don't get to sleep for however long. But like 3 nights ago, he finally started like actually sleeping. Like he'd get up to nurse, and then we'd send him back down and he would settle down and like rest and sleep until like 6, 7. I think last night he went 5 hours, and we were like, okay, that's amazing.
Yeah. Wow.
Like a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, no, you need to be feeding him. He ate for like an hour.
They get hungry. It wakes them up. It's fine.
Yeah.
Unless something's wrong with him, that's fine.
We're not abusing our child. Believe me, we are being very careful and stuff. Like to the point where babies lose a certain amount of their body weight after birth. And the benchmark is they want them back at their birth weight after 2 weeks. He was almost a pound over his birth weight before 2 weeks. And now he's at, because he was born 6'8", now we measured him today, he's at 8 pounds. He was born at first. He is a chunky boy.
Yep.
Nothing wrong with that.
1 second, gentlemen.
That's okay. Yeah, but other than that, like, I've been working and
just so you know.
I've been working and Kirith, my wife, has been doing well, and so yeah, it's just trying to live with a new one. It's just a new experience.
Yep, it's a whole thing.
The whole thing.
With my daughter, she had periods of not wanting to be held and then wanting to be held, and it was very confusing very early on. My son, no, he just wanted to be held. Like there's nothing else. Just hold me. Doesn't matter if I'm getting fed. Doesn't matter if I'm getting, whatever. Like I'll eat whatever. That's what he was like. But as long as I'm held, I'm good. And that was okay for the most part. Casey is a mom, and I know there's a million people who go up in arms, but when guys are talking, people are a little less likely to jump on them about it. We're advocates for the co-sleeping kind of thing, or at least co-laying down for a while. You know what I mean? Before they go to bed. People get weird about that kind of stuff, but I find that you need to be as relaxed as the baby is in order for them to get the sleep that they need anyway.
There's a billboard literally down my street that's like, I am best when I sleep alone. And it's a baby. And it's like, propaganda.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm sorry, have you ever actually seen a baby?
Right.
Have you had any experience with this, or is this all theoretical knowledge that you have here?
I suspect it's purely liability.
It is.
They don't want to say, oh, you can co-sleep. It's fine. Then somebody gets drunk, sleeps, rolls over onto their baby, crushes and kills it, and then sues the people.
It's less about crushing, though. It's actually I've had it's suffocation, but it's also just more of a chance for facing downward, and they get worried because SIDS statistics and whatever else. I have a cousin who died of SIDS following some other stuff that happened, and it was a whole it's one of those things that I don't think that they have all the factors for in any way, shape, or form, and they are just making best guesses and then giving blanket statements. That's tends to be what the medical community does for safety purposes. And I mean, I get it, but if you really do find a groove for your kid and there are no long-term adverse effects as far as you can tell, as soon as there start to be, change it. But you got to experiment somewhat with every single kid, and parents are made to see things and find things. And if we don't have that presupposition, where are we going to end up? In crazy town, like where we are now. So, but yeah, didn't think we were going there. But Alex, tell me about you and what's going on with the you and yours.
Oh, well, my siblings, for people on the podcast who don't know, I am the oldest of 8, and all of my siblings, except for the sister right next to me in birth order, have lice.
Oh, fun.
That's fun, and we're working on getting rid of that. I do not, as I said, my sister does not, but yeah, that's been going on, which is interesting because earlier this year, I still kind of dealing with it, had bed bugs in my room and tried to get rid of that. They're still not fully gone yet, but I'm getting there. And then last year, we all got ringworm. So,
oh man, through it.
Little tiny weird things that like to come in and infest places. We've been going through that. But in happier news, I'm making a lot of progress on a little clearing that I'm trying to make at the property. So
nice.
There's a bunch of trees that are right next to each other, and I'm been working on clearing it out so that we'll have a place where we can invite people over and host and stuff like that.
Sweet.
I've been making good progress on that.
Good work, man.
At the risk of sounding like a barbarian, both of those problems can be solved with fire.
Yes, I know. I left my books. I really want to burn them.
Yes. I would say burn, like you move stuff out first, but
it's also incredibly expensive to hire the people who come in and torch the place. So
yeah, why would you need to hire people?
Because
I forgot. Not everyone is a built-in arson known as a Boy Scout.
No. I am. But also, it's my grandparents' house, so don't really want to burn their house down.
Okay.
Yeah. That's fair. Mitigating factors on my pyrocenia.
Guys, continue. I'm going to mute myself for a moment.
Speaking of books, you just finished one apparently.
Yes, I did.
Why don't you give us which book you read, roughly how long it took, and your, I don't want to say necessarily spoiler free impressions, but if you like it, spoiler free. If it is, assuming it's a story. If it's not a story, just thoughts.
Okay, so just finished book 3 in the Queen's Thief series by Megan Whalen Turner. As recommended it last year, Jason Farley on Knox Unplugged recommended it, and I said, that sounds very interesting, and so I went and read it. And I fell absolutely head over heels in love with it. It is fantastically amazing series. It's a Greek-inspired sort of fantasy series, but the magic system, there's no really magic system to speak of, but there are gods that interact with the characters and stuff. Think like Percy Jackson, but written much, much better than Rick Riordan wrote that series. And and I like Percy Jackson. I legitimately enjoy it, but this one's just leagues better. One of the amazing things about it is that every single book in the series is a different genre. So the first one is them walking to a place, and then it ends in a heist. So it feels very similar to Ocean's 11 to me, that type of stuff. The second one is looking at it from the king's perspective, going out and battling different nations type stuff. That feel. The third one is a political thriller. The fourth one is a spy novel. The fifth one is the buddy cop. And the sixth one wraps everything up. And then there's a short story collection as well.
Very nice.
It is something that I've never seen done before in any series ever, and I absolutely love it. The book 3 is my favorite, and I just finished that one, so I'm super happy with it. I forgot how much I loved it, but it's so good.
In that vein of, and then we can move on if Brendan doesn't have anything after that. In that vein of things that you forgot how good they were, I've been recently getting back into the Joker blogs because someone brought up Heath Ledger and The Brood.
Mm-hmm.
Had either of you seen the Joker blogs or no?
I have not.
I definitely highly recommend it for people who have, a PG-13 or harder constitution. It's a web series, found footage series, kind of a thing that a guy did, doing an impersonation of Heath Ledger's Joker. He started out just doing it as I'm making YouTube videos with my impression of the Joker, basically, and then took that to a whole other level, and it becomes a whole found footage series. Like Arkham it starts out as basically Arkham documenting his interactions with Harley Quinzel, and her trying to do therapy with him. And it goes way, 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 way deeper and crazy twists and turns. His Joker, he does make his own over time. His Joker's a little less physically intimidating because he's smaller presence than Heath Ledger, but it ends up kind of being a Napoleon complex a little bit, which I really like for the Joker. And he's also a good bit funnier than Heath Ledger's Joker, as far as just like the level of funny to serious. He's still extremely scary, but he's also very funny, and you feel bad at laughing at almost every one of his jokes. You know, so it does a really, really good job. This was made, I want to say, early 2010s, and it was just fantastic. I started watching them again with Casey, and we're going to go through them, and it's really fun. So highly recommend for anyone who likes Batman, the Joker, all that other kind of stuff, if they're at least on a PG-13 R-ish kind of level. So there's not a lot of language in it at all. I don't remember any right off the top of my head, honestly, but they do such a great job, like you wouldn't notice it, you know? So, yep.
The only comments that I would make on both of this subject, excuse me, is as far as each book is a different genre. I think doing that circumvents a lot of problems that sequelitis creates. In my opinion, the best sequels are ones that you can't actually compare them to the original movie because they're so radically different. It shows that you have variety of writing. With Batman, if we want to go there, Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, those two movies are, I feel like people kept trying to say, oh, Batman Begins was better. Oh, The Dark Knight's better. I'm like, you can't compare them because they're not the same plot structure at all. You know, like you can have preferences, sure, but you can't say one film is better than the other because they were trying to do different things. Similarly speaking, my personal favorite Marvel movie is The Winter Soldier. It's a political thriller.
That one, yeah.
It is a political thriller. That's what it is.
Right.
It's not what Captain America was. It's not trying to be.
Right.
And that makes it, frankly, really, really good in my opinion. And then for found footage stuff, like it sounds to me like Marble Hornets, which I don't know if you've heard of that, but it was a found footage YouTube series that was based around Slender Man. And that was way back in the day. And it got really complicated with a complex plot. I stopped following it because I'm not into horror, but it was really interesting for a while and also very confusing because it was found footage and there was amnesia involved.
So fun. There you go. Well, I think that's a good spot. We can come back to that another time, but we'll go ahead and go to our break and come on back for our main topic. God said to me, blah, 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 and we shall see if he really did or not.
Stay tuned for the show. Poets at War is sponsored by the following. Attention all Christian writers and creative peoples. Are you searching for a place to share your work and receive encouragement from fellow wordsmiths? Look no further than the Broodcast. Inspired by the legendary Inklings of old, a group of writers who banded together during the Second Great War. The Broodcast is your monthly gathering for inspiration, fellowship, and critique. Join us as we share our stories and support our fellow soldiers on our creative missions. Enlist in the Broodcast community today at joshuadavidling.com/brood. Travel cyberspace. Serve the greatest cause. Join the ranks of the Brood today.
Imagine if you had everything Tolkien ever wrote. Well, you can't have his, but you can have mine. The Ling Lyricanium is $10 a month, and you can find it at joshuadavidling.com/LL. That's joshuadavidling.com/LL.
And now back to the trenches. This is Poets at War.
So, yeah, I I I definitely wanted to bring up this topic with you guys, knowing that I'm pretty sure each of you holds a what would be considered by a seminary a loose cessationist position. Like I said, by a seminary. Yeah, by a seminary. I'm not saying actually that's what it is or not. I'm saying they would not find you charismatic if they asked you questions. So
Cessationists are just dispensationalist light, I think.
Oh, here we go. So, specifically talking though, I want to lay aside talks of, special gifting. I want to lay aside talks of tongues. I want to lay aside talks of these sorts of things and get down to God told me something is a common phrase even outside of charismatic circles. A lot of evangelical people tend to say this sort of thing. I've met Catholics, even in the Brood, who have said this sort of thing. Obviously, background. We'll cover our cessationist base here real quick. Hebrews 1, right, the beginning. In previous times and places, God spoke through the prophets, and now in these last days, He speaks through His Son. That's a basic paraphrase. Anyone can look it up. If Brendan looks like he's about to read it, which he can if he wants.
I'm trying to find it because
you wanna lay it down. Okay, that's fine.
I want to make sure that I have the that I because sometimes the devil's in the details when it comes to wording.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm not.
Well, he's doing that.
Specifically,
Let me grab mine.
Okay, go ahead. That's the thing, though. I'm not saying necessarily like this is the definitive passage. This is just the one that gets brought up the most, in my opinion. And we can dissect that too. But I just wanted to say that we essentially affirm the basics of this passage without even getting into the details, obviously. But yeah. You want to take a look at it, Brendan?
Yeah. Do you want me to read it? Because I can.
Sure.
Quick.
Stop wherever you want. But yeah, just start Hebrews 1.
Hebrews 1 at the very beginning. So, long ago, at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by His Son, whom He appointed, the heir of all things, through whom also He created the world. He is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of His nature, and He upholds the universe by the word of His power. After making purification for sins, He sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high, having become as much superior to angels as the name He has inherited is more excellent than theirs.
That's a good spot. Yeah.
I think, because beyond that, it's just saying more
That's
of
part of a preamble.
God. He's the Son of God. He's the Son of God. By the way, He's the Son of God. He is the Son of God.
And He's better than the angels, better than any. Exactly. So we have a definitive spoken that is Jesus. And Jesus is the word. A lot of people make the jump and say Jesus is the scripture's closed. This is what God has said. There you go. The hard cessationists go one step too far, in my opinion, and there's a lot of cessationists' opinion, quite frankly. I'd say the majority of people who call themselves cessationists have a problem with the hard cessationist view. And that is that God no longer speaks, God no longer does anything active in the world, which is crazy because the passage itself is in there. We just read is saying He upholds everything, present tense, by His power, the word of His power, etc. So as far as most people go, I hear the argument that everything that needs to be spoken to in any kind of audible way has been spoken, and anything outside of the 66 books could potentially be demonic, and thus we need to leave it off to the side, or test it or whatever. There's a lot of different positions. And so basically I have a feeling, and then there's, okay, I forget who said it. It was a Puritan. I want to say it was Edwards, but I'm not sure. Which I know Puritan, he's connected, but anyway, if you have personal revelation, it is I'm paraphrasing him. If you have personal revelation, it is essentially irrelevant, because there isn't anything that God hasn't said already to you in his word. It's just pointing you back to his word. So it doesn't matter that he's pointing it out to you. You see what I'm saying? And so I would take objection with that, but I have heard, and this was pointed out to me a long time ago by an elder in one of the churches that really in the church that I grew up in. He made the distinction, and I like this one. I'd love to hear what you guys think, and then we can launch into whoever wants to jump in. He made the distinction between revelation, which is the scripture and the word given to the prophets, and written down and all this other kind of stuff, and the words that we don't have that God legitimately spoke to people in the Old Testament, period, the old dispensation, whatever you want to call it. But now, and we have all that he has revealed now until, the eschaton. But there is such a thing as illumination. And that is God. He can speak to you, quote unquote, in illumination by pointing you to something that the scripture already says. And he can use anything in the world to do that, anything in creation to do that. But it is not him revealing something to you in the same way that he revealed something to the prophets, which was new and needed to be written down, right? And preserved and taught. I think it's helpful, if not 100% perfect. Where are you guys on this kind of thing? Anyone wants to jump in, continue the conversation? I'll let Brennan go.
Oh, you want to let me go? Okay. So I like that. I would have used different words. And I would slightly make an addition to the illumination side.
Okay.
Not because I think that there can. I agree. I don't think that there's ever going to be a point where God will tell someone something that will alter, change, or add to the Bible.
Yep.
I think that's something that is safe, and I don't even think that's necessarily inherently cessationist.
Right.
Right? Because my issue, I think that my issue again is that, to me, when people talk about cessationism, I think there is a tendency to go directly to the extreme of hard cessationism, I think, as you called it, Joshua.
Right.
Where it's like God never speaks ever. And I'm like,
right.
Because these are the same people a lot of the times who will say, oh, but God takes care of everything, and they have no room in their theology for angels.
Right.
What are angels doing? Just sitting on their hands? Hanging forever in heaven?
Right.
Come on. They've got jobs. Let them do their jobs. But I will say that while you can't add to Scripture, I do believe that God can speak to people and give them particulars about a situation that they are in particularly.
Okay.
And I have two examples of that we can get into later from my own personal life.
Sure. I have
one from my personal life, one from my mother's.
But yeah, I wanted to kind of lay some groundwork, but yeah.
Yeah, we're in the groundwork section for now. So I think that revelation versus illumination, again, I quibble about the word of illumination because it, to me, that is very limiting to pointing to the Bible, right? It's God saying, I already told you here. Go look here.
Right.
Figure it out. Which, I mean, yeah, he does that, I would say, more often than not. And I think, and I agree that he can use anything to illuminate. He could use you. He could use me. He could use a rock. He could use a book falling on your head. He could use an apple falling on your head. He could use just a random sign that happens to have, that's covered up partially, and gives like a verse reference by accident, because part of the word is covered up or whatever, Like he can use anything he wants to illuminate and point you to the Bible. But I do also think he is willing to speak audibly, heavy quotes on the audible side of things, to to also encourage, poke in the right direction, whatever,
Right. Alex.
I also think that the revelation elimination distinction is at very least interesting. I like that more than the some of the other things that I've seen on it. I was raised effectively cessationist. It wasn't officially cessationist, but effectively that was the one that the theological stream that I was raised under. And I personally have never had any experience one way or the other, as far as like feeling that it never happens or that, it's happening every day. I've had a lot of debates because I tend to fall cessationist, like John MacArthur calls himself a leaky dispensationalist.
Right.
So I tend to fall on the cessationist side of issues, and I know that we're not getting into a prophecy and stuff like that, but I'm kind of left homeless in this debate. Because I know enough people who have said that they had experiences, and I'm not immediately willing to completely discount those experiences.
Right.
But also, I think that it's really, really dangerous whenever we start hearing, like, even the moderates of the charismatic side talking like Michael Brown, where he says, okay, so these are the standards for prophecy. These are the standards for prophecy. And then we vet it and we say, okay, this is prophecy. And if it fails, then we just say, oh, we got it wrong, and the guy can still prophesy because it's not letting the biblical rules of prophecy inform that. And so that's the battle that that's the intellectual battle that I'm trying to fight inside of myself, trying to figure out where I stand on all those issues. But I see massive faults on both sides, and so I'm just up in the air waiting to see where I come down on it.
Okay. All right.
Very long way of saying I just don't know.
It's all right. Moving forward, I think Brendan kind of hit the nail on the head with we'll keep rolling with illumination until someone suggests something better. I'm willing to accept something better if someone comes up with something. But the main thing that I think is left out in the distinction, and Brendan, you very lightly touched on this, is when God revealed doctrine in the Old Testament, and when God revealed the judgment and the exaltation of nations and kings and, all these sorts of things, and future prophecy and, all these sorts of things. He also, at various times and places, revealed or illumined, however you want to look at it, in encouragement. He did so with he also, in addition to doing the things that I just said, he also gave encouragement. He gave situational awareness. He gave what's the term? Rebuke, but I'm thinking more specifically like he pierced the heart of somebody with something from the moral law. And that would be definitely fall under illumination in our definition at the moment. So when God did those things, I'm thinking particularly of Elisha's servant as one of them. Elisha's servant wasn't given something that needed to be immediately written down and then presented to someone. for whatever reason, like to kings and princes and all this other kind of stuff. I think that's a whole other thing, right? Whether we're writing it down as scripture or we're presenting it to a king or we're preserving it for future generations, I think that's different than encouragement, and situational awareness, whatever the situation might be. I think those two things both fall under illumination in that God is giving you a meta view of your life. And I find that the author likes to do that sometimes. It reminds me of in Lord of the Rings, Galadriel. In the movie, I think it does happen in the books too, if I remember correctly. She in Shelob's lair, he takes the light of Erendil, right? And he hears her, and she speaks to him, and she encourages him and helps him through by her power, right? And he has a vision outside of himself of what's going on. I think that is the best example of illumination. I mean, it's literally the light of an end, right? Like, that's what I think most people are trying to say when they say God spoke to me, and they really did experience something. God is giving a meta view of your situation, whether to encourage, to condemn, to whatever. And he's doing it by the light of his word and by the light of nature, and giving you, this is really what's happening. This is the storyteller eye view. And it's not like he's revealing anything to you but reality. He's not telling you how reality works. He's not pulling back the curtain and saying, this is my law, right? This is what you must do. This is the fact that I'm Trinity. You know what I'm saying? It's not that. He's not pulling back the curtain and showing the inner workings of the story. He's just saying, this is where you are in the story. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've got the two stories that I want to tell.
And you can tell them when you're ready.
But I mean, we can wait on that because we're still, I think, laying groundwork. But the other thing is, you got to remember that, excuse me, the majority of these debates are happening in the global north. You go to the global south, and people don't question if someone, like, a lot of the times, talk about Jesus appearing to Muslims in dreams. And he is saying, and he either says, I am Jesus, go to this church and find out about me. At which point he's not giving revelation as predefined. Or he's not even saying that he's Jesus. He's saying, go to these people and ask them about who I am.
Right.
And he's still going to the church, But that individual, what would a cessationist do with that?
Most of them don't know what to do with it.
They don't know what to do. What about the fact that in the global south there are miracles happening on a regular basis? I don't know if cessationism is purely for the revelation and stuff, or are they also talking about miracles? But I know of a story of a man who raised a girl from the dead.
Mm-hmm.
My father is currently going to give him the Wilberforce Award from the Colson Center in Indianapolis. So that's dating. That's dating this exact recording. But this man, he was poisoned with enough poison to kill a horse, and he lived. And the witch doctor of the village said, "These people have something they need to say. You need to listen to that." And he converted a village because of that. Like, these miracles are happening in the global south, but they're not happening in the global north. And while I think there is wisdom in being cautious about adding to revelation, I think that part of what, again, and this is me just harping on this point, what mires the discussion is the question of all is words. That's what it boils down to. It's just words. When we say revelation, we mean biblical revelation adding to scripture.
Right.
but we don't have a word for direction, basically, is what it comes
Yes.
down to.
I like that better, direction. Although it's not always direction of like, it's not even always what you are to do. I'll go ahead and tell one of my experiences. I only have mine to give. There's some in my family, but I really kind of want to stick to mine because I don't think I do justice to the other ones. The first one I can think of was I was, and this is very, in many ways, sort of an evangelical experience, but we're just going to go with it, and you take it for what it's worth. I've had experiences like this all my life, and it's made me who I am. So take that with it too. I had a dream, and most of my experiences have been dreams. That's the other thing. We haven't really even talked about dreams. Dreams are a whole other thing, and I actually believe God is more inclined to speak in those times than as far as like directional dreams, illumination kind of things, than he is like you're just walking down the road. But I was a teenager, and I was working 4 or 5 days a week at Publix. I was working 2 to 4 DJ jobs on the weekend, and then going to church and trying to do school all at the same time. It was absolutely ridiculous. Oh, and football. I don't know if I mentioned football. Football practice and football game. So during football practice one day, and this is just the beginning, the dream comes later, I was running gassers, which is wind sprints for people who call it something different. You basically run the short length of the field up and back as fast as you can, take as long as the coaches will give you, and then do it again. And so I was before practice, I had a Sobe. Remember Sobe sodas? They're not sodas, Sobe drinks. This one had caffeine. I had no clue, and I was caffeine crashing during gassers. And I felt like my head was going into the clouds and my feet were sinking down into quicksand. Like I felt like I was being physically stretched. And I passed out for a short amount of time. That night, I had a dream. And in that dream, I was on a weird Seussical vacation, like Dr. Seuss land. And there was this giant old house that was a bed and breakfast, and I was going with some church kids, and we were going to stay and have, a weekend away. And there's this giant old Seuss mansion, right? And it's run by this English butler who's black, sort of an Idris Elba sort of person. And he owned the place. It was been his family, etc. And he's like, just enjoy yourselves, have fun. Well, I'm enjoying myself at like an air hockey table or something, and all of a sudden some people from the youth group, whatever, start running in and screaming, and there's fire behind them. And we run up further into the house because they were down in the basement, and the fire climbs, because that's what it does. Turns out they had loosed some demons from the basement, and they were climbing up after us, and we were closing the door and trying to hide and whatever else. And Mr. Wendell's leading us. That's the name of the black butler, Mr. Wendell. He's leading us through this whole situation. And then we get to, and some of the times when we have to turn tail and run to the next floor, we lose some people. So there's only a handful of us left by the time we get toward the upper floors and stuff like that. And what happened was when we know there's only one floor above us, and it's basically like a greenhouse rooftop sort of situation, Mr. Wendell says, "You guys go up there now. I'm going to stay here and hold them off." And we're like, no, you need to stay with us. You saved us. We need your help. And he gives us a walkie-talkie. And he says, "Go up. I'll talk to you when it's all over." And so we go up, and we're there, and we hear a ruckus and a craziness, and you hear him shout out, scream aloud, and then nothing, like without even the walkie-talkie. We're just hearing this, through the floor, basically. And I start calling, Mr. Wendell, Mr. Wendell, are you there? Are you there? Are you okay? Are you there? And I started to hear back through the radio one of the songs that we did for kids' parties from the movie School of Rock. Seems completely random. As baby, we was making straight A's, but we were stuck in a dumb daze. Don't take much to memorize your lies. Feel like I've been hypnotized. And then that magic man, he come to town. Woo-wee, he done spun my head around. He said, recess is in session, 2 and 2 make 5. And now, baby, oh, I'm alive. And that, it completely reframed that song in my mind to Christ, the one who showed up at the wedding of Cana and said, it's party time. You know what I mean? And he was telling me in that moment, I felt the comfort in it. And I woke up tearful and happy and feeling like I had just slept 12 hours, even though it had been like 3. And it was the most unreal physical experience beyond that too. But basically, like, this dream said, dude, you got a lot going on. You're taking everything way too seriously. I've got you. It was really that level of just deep comfort. And yeah, I made it through that. And I've had dreams like that similarly. I've had dreams that led me to Casey. I may get into that if we get to a point, but I want to make sure you guys get yours. I've had, usually when things are really, really, really bad, or I'm really anticipating something, I'll even pray that God gives me wisdom to make the decision in the moment. And it's usually somewhere I can reference a dream that I had. Sometimes I don't remember the dream until the moment, and it's clear and obvious. It's just something he's always done in my life. It's not only happened probably like a dozen times, but it's really clear when it happens, like abundantly clear. So who's next? Or you can talk about it, whatever.
Once again, everything that I said previously was just a fancy way of saying I don't know. So
right, yeah, and I totally get it.
I wish the dreams that I had were that fun. The only 2 dreams that I remember that I'm convinced were from God were nightmares. So thanks.
I've had one nightmare from God, but it also had a sequel that was a good dream.
Well, both of mine involved a black force that was sin. A very specific sin. I know which one. And one was him pulling me out. The other was it breaking down the door to my bedroom and storming in.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that was fun. But that's not what I wanted to talk about for my story. And I'll go over both of them as quickly as possible, as we are, once again, we're talking a lot.
That's okay.
The first one, which is my personal experience. I was in college, and I had a tendency to hang out with what were known as the couch critters. The couch critters were nerds, Magic players, video gamers, anime geeks, my people. But they were also not Christian because I didn't go to a Christian college. I was at a secular school. I was at the school where my dad worked. The mascot were the Blue Devils in Connecticut. Not exactly known as a pinnacle of morality or conservatism, but either way. And I was friends with this girl who, she was not quite non-binary exact. I mean, she might have been non-binary, but she wasn't quite trans, because this was before trans blew up. But she definitely was more willing to She definitely was. I don't want to be a girl.
Right.
Like, I don't want to be a girl. I want to be my own girl. I'm going to be, I'm going to shave my head. I'm going to do this. I'm going to, whatever. Like, she confessed to me one time that she felt bad that she wanted to do housewife things. And I'm like, that's not a bad thing if it makes you happy. Chill out. But either way, anyway, I had my pocket Bible with me, and she said, "Can I see that?" I'm like, "Sure." I handed it to her, and she said, "Wow, I've never really held a Bible before." And that clicked in my head of, oh, I'm supposed to give this to her. Okay. So I said, "Okay, you can have it." And she goes, "What? No, I can't take this from you." And I'm like, "Yes, you can. You just did. I just gave it to you." And she goes, "Oh, okay, well, I'll give it back." I said, "Fine." I got her to take it. That's all that mattered. Well, I went to Dad, who was I went to Dad's office, and as I was walking, I was just getting this really heavy feeling, and this thought kept going through my head: I need to buy her a Bible. I need to buy her a Bible. There's a bookstore down the road. Okay, here we go. So I went to Dad, and Dad said, "Hey, I need to talk to this other professor for a bit. We can meet quite." I said, "Oh, can I borrow the keys and drive down to the bookstore to buy a Bible for a friend?" And he said, "Yes, because my dad's not an idiot." And so he handed me the keys. I drove down. It took me longer to find the Bible I wanted because I wanted to get her an ESV.
Mm-hmm.
NIV's okay. I prefer ESV translation.
NASB forever. Anyway.
I just think it's that nice balance of old language, but not like so old that it's like, this big, right? But it gets the right regalness that I think should be there across.
Yeah.
So I get the ESV, and Dad said, "All right, when we're done, I'll meet you behind the student center." Now, bear in mind, this is a commuter school. So the student center does have a drive up and drop off, but there's also a parking garage right next to it that's always full because it's a commuter school. So I drive around, and Dad's not there. It took me way too long to get this book, and I'm like, Dad said the conversation would be short. He said that he should be here. He said he'd meet me here. And then I went, "Oh, I'm supposed to give it to her now, aren't I?" And a voice that I didn't think of in my head said, "Yup." And I went, "Oh, okay." And I pulled into the parking garage right next to the exit on the ground floor. There was a parking spot. This doesn't happen.
Right.
So I parked there, walked in, and I gave her the Bible. And as soon after I gave it to her, and she was like, "What? You can't buy this for me?" I'm like, "I already did. Stop it." You get to keep that. After that was said, Dad walked up.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I am convinced that voice was God.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what it sounded like.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't a sound.
Right.
Exactly. But it was a thought that I can't explain to you, but it wasn't my thought.
Right.
And it wasn't, but again, not special revelation.
Yeah.
Just direction and confirmation.
Right.
This is what I'm supposed to do, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. My latest one, I'll say this one really quick because it's very short. I was in church and I was just praying during communion, holding the elements, and just praying for help, like I do, because I'm a very needy person. And yeah, exactly. I did, as far as being able to hear your own thoughts, my brain makes a million voices. I can, because that's how my brain works. My brain is a full-fledged Dolby surround system. When it comes to sound, I'm very good at imagining very specific sounds and pitches, being a musician, being all these other sorts of things. So when I say I can tell you what it sounded like, I'm not saying I can tell you what it sounded like with these. I'm saying I can tell you what it sounded like in my Dolby surround sound imagination of sound, right? It sounded like my dad doing the voice of Aslan. Like identical, because that to me is what God sounded like as a kid. You know? And I was just asking for help. Please establish the work of my hands. You know, I've been working so long at this, that, the other, whatever. And he says, and I'll try to do the tone justice, not the voice necessarily, but the tone of how he said it. I will be with you, Bard, and it will be enough. That was it. I will be with you, Bard. And it was almost like, yeah, I'm the one who made you that. Not you. I know you're all insecure about like people thinking, well, you are what you are. And it's stupid because I made you that in the first place. So shut up about it. You know, stop being all precious about it. I'll be with you, Bard, and it'll be enough. So there you go. That's usually what that's like. Most of the time it's a dream for me, but and like I said, I've only had like a dozen of these ever in my life. They're not common. They're not something that's, you know, super common. And most of those were me asking for who I'm going to marry and God giving me a very specific thing, a common thread throughout many dreams. I don't think even the whole dream was him talking, you know. Just little things here and there, little hints here and there. Every single woman I've ever dated, and this was not my choice, had some connection to the name Anne. My wife's middle name is Angelica. It was either their middle name or their mom's name or their, it was a closely associated name with every woman who I ever had serious talks about maybe possibly one day getting married to. Every single one along the way. And Angelica was where it ended up. And so my daughter's middle name is Anne, not because it's a pretty little white girl overused middle name, but because of that. And then I find out much later that Anne is the name of the ship and the queen who sent the Lings to the United States. It's literally the name of the ship that was sent and the queen that sent them from the Palatine on the Palatine migration to the Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Dutch migration. So, like, I when I tell my daughter why I named her certain things, and I get to Anne, I named you Anne because God has led our family along in mysterious ways through that name. So there you go. Alex, any further words before we move on to our final thing, which is just a lyric breakdown? I have an idea of what you might say, but keep going. I'm giving you chances.
So I've heard stories like that stuff before, like, yep, and showing the thread and all that. And the thing that I come back to and rejoice in is gets back to doctrines of grace, sovereignty of God. The way that I have specifically come to believe in those things is that God is the writer.
That's right.
And that is the only analogy that makes the world. That is the only analogy that does the picture that we are shown in the Bible any form of justice whatsoever. It maintains the true freedom that we have. We actually have freedom to actually make choices. But ultimately, if you look at it from the meta level, God is in control of it. And as the writer, he can do whatever he wants.
That's right.
Now,
and he does.
He's given us he's given us the book of rules, and he said, this is the norm. This is what this is the normal way that things are going to happen. But every so often, like Brennan was talking about with the fig tree and the spirits of nature, last episode, you can say, yeah, okay, just blow that off here. Okay, we'll make a pass here because I'm God and I can, put a patch in or whatever. And whenever you have whatever the doctrine ends up being, whatever the accepted Orthodox doctrine on this question ends up being, I like Doug Wilson's idea that we're currently in the early church. Well, we're still figuring out a bunch of stuff. We just figured out the doctrine. We just figured out the doctrine of sola scriptura 5 years ago or 500 years ago. We are well away from done. And whatever the accepted doctrine on this question ends up being, it has to take into account that those things actually happen. And it also has to take into account that those things are not normal. Right. At least not in the global north, as Brendan was saying. Not in the world that has been, for better or for worse, successfully evangelized. And we have to figure out how to melt those things. I don't know how. I am an amateur theologian at best.
This is a subject for a different conversation, but I think I'm hesitant to say that the global north is evangelized. We are the first culture in the history of civilization that doesn't know how to define a man and a woman.
They do. They just suppress the truth and unrighteousness.
Right. Yes, and I accept that. But one of the things that I that I would pose is the other issue is that we don't see things, and we don't, like, there's a certain level of expectation versus perception in addition to that. Like, and this is a conversation for a different time. If you expect miracles, you will see miracles more often.
Sure.
If you don't expect miracles, you won't see them as often.
Unless God slaps you in the face with them like a wet fish, yeah.
Yes, unless he slaps one in the face with like a wet fish. Thank you, Jonah. Veggie Tales. But the thing is, like, and that's one of the reasons why I don't like saying when people are like, "Oh, you're a cessationist," or like, "I'm like," it makes me cringe because it's like we are, by accepting that you are forcing your vision to be colored to a certain
right.
That's why I push back against that. But yeah.
So I know that we have to cut and get to the next one, but brief defense of my statement that the global north is the place in the world that's been successfully evangelized is that we now agree on Christian things. Even across the right-left spectrum, we have giant errors, but like we agree that we need to take care of the poor. Now, everybody agrees that we need to take care of the poor.
We even agree that the weird outcasts need to be treated as human beings.
Yep.
We just don't know what treated like human beings means.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
It's
there was I believe he was a journalist who went to, I think, Saudi Arabia, and right before he left, he was talking with a Christian friend, and his Christian friend said, "Oh, you're way more Christian than you know." He said, No, I am a solid atheist. I am not a Christian by any means."
Guys, and he went, wrap this up. You guys can talk to each other and wrap this up. I need to check on Peter. I'll be right back.
Okay, got it. But he went to, I believe it was Saudi Arabia, and he saw a kid out in the streets playing a game where he was hitting a cat with a baseball bat. And all of the moms were staring at it, watching, this is normal. And he went, shoot, I am a Christian. Not like actually Christian, but I am Christian. Because that is something that we have simply, the successful evangelism of the Western Hemisphere has caused a sea change in the way that people see the world, even atheists. Yeah, that's what I mean by successfully evangelize.
Sure. Okay, I can see that, and that's the same reason why everyone accepts that Odin was a peace-loving individual in Thor, when the real Odin was a shamanistic warmonger who told Freya to cause all the men of the earth to fight each other. So okay, I see your point, I see your defense, and I accept that.
Moving on to the final segment.
Final segment.
Okay.
We'll be right back on Poets at War.
I'm Ian Wilson, and I create graphic art using primarily traditional methods, supplementing with digital where it's needed. I use a real pen, a real paper, a real graphite to make my art. I like to feel my art. I've always been this way. I love the feeling of a pen or pencil in my hand, the sound of graphite scratching paper, and I love the sight of a nice black line making its way across the page. So why choose traditional art over digital? Traditional art has an organic, natural quality that seems to be missing from most digital illustrations. The illustrated books and comics that were made in the days before digital have an excellence and staying power that is just as vibrant now as it was decades ago. These are the stories that stay with you. Dr. Seuss, Winnie the Pooh, Where the Wild Things Are. People still read these. I'm currently working on my own graphic novel series, Legend of the Swordbearer, and I've also had the privilege to draw graphics for 2 motion comic series, along with illustrations for a small magazine, Logosophia magazine, and various book covers. Don't let traditional art fade into the dust. Help me keep it alive. You won't regret it. Visit my website at ianthomaswilson.com for more info.
Get down! We're returning to the trenches on Poets at War.
Okay. All right, gentlemen. So if you want to look it up yourselves, you can pull it up. If not, I'll just read it. But I wanted to deep dive into these lyrics because I think they're really awesome and simple. Peter, if you want to come sit with me, that's fine. We're almost done. Come here, buddy.
What's the name of the song?
It is Canaan Bound by Andrew Peterson.
Canaan Bound by Andrew Peterson.
Yes, indeed.
If I only knew how many A's were in each part.
I know, right? That's me.
C-A-N-A-N.
That's me with. That's me. It's C-A-N-A-A-N. But I always get Morocco messed up.
Oh my gosh! How many R's? How many?
How many R's? How many C's? Anyway. Anyway, have either of you heard this song?
I have. I love it.
This is my favorite Peterson. I will listen to it. It is an old one. Why don't you go ahead and listen to it just so you can hear it? Then we can deep dive.
Wait, that's a JPEG, Brendan. That's not. Oh no, there's a YouTube video.
A few minutes later.
Beautiful.
Yep, it's a wonderful song. So yeah, I just wanted to do a brief sort of kind of deep dive into the lyrics because they aren't super deep, but I think that what is deep there is super deep. Obviously, the whole idea of writing a song from Abraham's perspective, and he does a couple Abraham perspective songs. This one in particular always gets me, though. It's something that I love getting into with my wife. So we'll just read through a little bit and stop where we want to make notes. Stop me wherever you want to stop me. Sarah, take me by my arm. Tomorrow we are Canaan bound, where westward sails the golden sun, and Hebron's hills are amber crowned. That is the refrain in this one. I just love story of Abraham. Is just so strong, particularly I think right now for millennials who aren't inheriting anything because of either their parents losing everything or selfish parents, whatever the case may be. A lot of them, I think of the van life
bad economy.
Yeah, I know, bad economy in general, but like I think of the van life people and the people striking out to be homesteaders and all these other sorts of things. And I love, you think even back to Oregon Trail. There's a sense in this song that reminds me a lot of the Oregon Trail. And we have a place where we're going and it's going to be better. And we have a real hope for that. So bid your troubled heart be still. The grass, they say, is soft and green. The trees are tall and honey-filled. So Sarah, come and walk with me. Like the stars across the heavens flung, like water in the desert sprung. Like the grains of sand are many suns. O Sarah, fair and barren one, come to Canaan, come. I love the emotional roller coaster of that particular verse, because it's stars and then water in the desert, just like he's saying, we have this promise of many from a place of barrenness, and it just, the first line, stars across the heavens flowing, this great and amazing thing, water in the desert, coming out of nowhere, like the grains of sand are many sons. Once again, huge, crazy idea, crazy promise. Oh, Sarah, fair and barren one, acknowledging the brokenness, acknowledging where they're actually at. And then the promise, come to Canaan, come.
It also
beautiful. Go
it
ahead.
also pushes them on in faith, because Sarah, fair and barren one, after the promise that they've been given.
Yep.
Are like the grains of sand are.
Right.
It's specific to their family, the faith that he's asking in the song to go with him, because we have faith that this one thing will happen. Have faith here too.
Yep.
Let's go.
Yep. And this verse right here is the one that made me think of it specifically for this episode, considering everything we talked about. I trembled at the voice of God, a voice of love and thunder deep. With love he means to save us all, and love has chosen you and me. I love that love chose us. I love that Andrew points that out. I love a voice of love and thunder deep. It's a really fantastic, strong way of showing the idea of God thundering in love. There's a lot of songs that really, really hit me over the years. One of them is another one is Rich Mullins' The Love of God, where he says, the reckless raging fury that they call the love of God. Back when the song Reckless Love was getting lambasted on all ends one way or another, no matter what you think about the song, they were saying, oh, God's love isn't reckless, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, anthropomorphic language, the guy is not exactly the greatest when it comes to, the guy who wrote it, not the greatest when it comes to his actual theology, and he thinks something weird with that, sure. But reckless in that it seems it seems to us crazy and relentless. I associate reckless with relentlessness, and the reckless raging fury is that's the Rich Mullins song, and the reckless raging fury that they call the love of God. I love every time in Narnia when Aslan roars, and the moment with Shasta's the big one I'm thinking of, where he says myself 3 times, and each time is different. One of them is big and grand and scary. Another one's really low and just shakes the earth. And then a whisper, myself. And I love that God can thunder and love at the same time. It's like the most comforting thing. My son, right here, actually, he, when we were in the hospital, Casey had to be in surgery a lot longer after he was C-sectioned, and I held him for probably about almost 50 minutes, almost an hour, and sang every song I could think of to him, and the lowest, rumbliest kind of voice I could. A lot of Tolkien, Far Over the Misty Mountains, the Song of Durin, stuff like that. And he got more and more comforted by the rumbliness of his big daddy holding him than anything else. Even though he was hungry, even though he was cold, even though he was, whatever, the warmth and the rumble is what I associate with God. And I always have. Long after we are dead and gone, 1,000 years our tale be sung. How faith compelled, how faith compelled and bore us on. How barren Sarah bore a son. So come to Canaan, come. Where westward sails the golden sun, and Hebron's hills are amber crowned. O Sarah, take me by my arm. Tomorrow we are Canaan bound. And regardless of your eschatology, we're Canaan bound. Keep walking. That's the main thing I want to get across to everybody right now. Regardless of where we are, Abraham had one little tiny grave plot of land and nothing else to his name. You know, he got more as he went on. He got armies along with him, but he didn't have anything in that promised land until generations later. The fact is, we are Canaan bound. The real new heavens and new earth are coming, regardless of how you specifically define them. We're getting there. Keep pushing. Run the race, like Hebrews says. That's the push that I want to really give with this song. And don't neglect the fact that Sarah's barren. America's shot, man. Good thing God raises the dead. So, yeah, I'm gonna leave it open to you guys for closing thoughts, and then I'll sign off.
Usually saying it, it doesn't have to do with the lyrics of the song, but one thing that is worth mentioning. I love the one of my favorite things to do. This is why I basically only listen to albums now, not individual songs or playlists. Is whenever you song that leads perfectly into another, and this song does that with actually probably my favorite Rich Mullins songs, "Let There Be Light." The next song in the album, there's this, the instruments carry right over into the next song. I just think that that's great. Going down to the what you were talking about having hope in spite of Sarah being barren. This is what we were talking about on the Brood yesterday. In spite of situations that make you just okay, yep, it looks hopeless. God takes hopeless situations and makes them fruitful. And even if we don't see how that's going to happen, we have to have faith that that's how God works, because that's how he's worked before. That's how he is working now. That's how he will continue to work. And that is me preaching to myself right there.
And if we don't have faith, he's still going to do it, because he's just hilarious that way. And I mean that in the biblical form of the word hilarious.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not good with. I find it funny that I'm on Poets at War, because I'm not good at verbal poetry necessarily. I've popped out a verse or two every once in a while, especially back in high school and college. But most of the I'll leave the lyrical interpretation to you, because that's better, or you're better at that. My I was thinking about the Brood conversations too. And I think that I like what you said about acknowledging that life sucks, because that's definitely something like we can, if we're not careful, we'll go too far and we'll be Joel Osteen. And nobody wants to be Joel Osteen.
I know some people think I am at times, but
at the
that's me fighting against the darkness.
But that's the thing, right? Like, I think that so often in an attempt to not be something, we dive headlong into the other. And we dive, and one of the things that, like, my pastor does a lot is he likes to harp on the deny thyself, take up thy cross, and follow me, which is biblical. I cannot say it's not biblical, because that verse is literally in the Bible. At the same time, I and this is me perhaps being immature. I think if God put us on this earth just to suffer for a while before we could get to heaven, and that this earth is nothing and it means nothing and it's not important, and our chief end is to glorify God and enjoy him forever, and so we're just like spending our time here. What's the difference between this place and purgatory, which as Presbyterians we ostensibly like disavow. If this earth is meant to be something, it is valuable to a degree. The world, as the ephemeral construct of sin and a result of that, is different. Is bad? Yes, but the world, this earth, what God made of creation, that still has value, in my opinion. And so that, yes, Sarah is barren, but I love the visual imagery. Stars across heavens flung, water in the desert spring. Grains of sand are many suns. That's their promise. And then, where westward sails the golden sun. Golden, gold, valuable, beautiful. And Habron's hills are amber crowned. Amber was the color that represented me at my wedding. I like amber. I'm a little biased toward that. And then we are keen and bound. Yeah, we're so like I basically am. That's just a long-winded way of me agreeing with everything you said. And then adding on to it, the yeah, I am worried about things in my life, but I need to remember the ravens and the lilies, and I have to keep. Waiting isn't passive; it's an active thing. You have to actively wait, because if you don't actively wait, you will despair.
Yep. Fantastic. Well, everybody, with that, be your family's bard. Do not turn to the right or to the left, and the Lord will be with you wherever you go. We'll see you next time in the trenches on Poets at War.
God of song, settle